So I got a good one for you guys today, especially if you're into the theory of speed, making things go fast. The secrets of the pro builders, right? But before we even get to that, I want to show you what I've been doing on Bottle Rocket here. I got the motor, the trains, all that stuff is built and ready to go. But I've been going through the whole car and cleaning, prepping, doing all of this stuff we should have done when we first put this car together. So now it's all coming real nice. Here, look back here. All right, snazzy. I still haven't done the center of the car yet. That's next. I got to just get through there, and it's drudgery. It takes time, but we're getting it nice. It's amazing how clean this car is. You know, this whole thing. This is the only rust spot on the whole car. There's a spot right here, and a spot on the other side where it's a little soft. It's got some holes in it. But other than that, this car is like completely rust free. Getting sidetracked. So the video here today is it's in response to a comment that I got when we did the video talking about weight, and I was explaining on this particular car how the center of gravity is in a certain place, and as it transfers weight back, the front of the car will rise, the back of the car will come down, and any weight back here in this lowest, furthest back area is going to be detrimental to weight transfer. So I got this comment on that video, and that's from Daniel. And he says, interesting that you say weight at the very back isn't good for traction. Any serious no prep car where traction is everything has ballast back there, which is absolutely true. I responded, I said, I should have been more specific when I talked about that. The example I was giving was for a low horsepower, high center of gravity car like ours. Faster cars are ballasted in all different ways. And that's the crux of it. And that's the basic secret. Muscle cars, hot rods, and drag cars are three branches of the same tree, but they have three completely different purposes. In this channel, we mostly focus on the muscle car aspect of it because that's what the average viewer has, a muscle car type of car, something like this. But the three different branches, they have three completely different disciplines. And like on the hot rod end of things, individuality is everything. The car's got to be different, it's got to be cool, it's got to be unique. And on the drag end of things, it only has to be efficient, brutal efficiency. So drag cars get criticized by the other guys for being cookie cutter. But that cookie cutter aspect is that's the science of it. The reason they all look the same is because each individual type of race car has a unique set of circumstances that it operates under. And so because they're limited to whatever, let's say, body modification or wheelbase or power, whatever type of fuel they're running, whatever type of engine they're running, the weight that they're running at, all different factors. Depending on what the class is, there's going to be a very specific way that car is going to be ballasted to operate at maximum efficiency. Maximum efficiency is what it's all about. Now when I say ballast, I don't mean that weight is added in certain places, although that's part of it. But ballasted meaning that the car is constructed in such a way to have the center of gravity at a certain point, at a certain height, in relation to the center of rotation. Because this is the universal point of every car, of every drag car, right here, the center of rotation. What happens here and the height of this dictates what everything else is going to be. What I'm telling you now is like this secret stuff. This is like people who build cars, people who build race cars. This is what they know. This is what they're building, right? It's more than just taking tubing and sticking it all together. It's positioning certain things in the car in such a way to achieve that total efficiency based on the power characteristics and that rotation. So let's use two extremes. Let's use two extremes, and then we'll talk about the middle afterwards. So the one extreme is this car. So this would be, for all intents and purposes, this is a stock Eliminator car. Basically, it's a stock Eliminator car with a nitrous bottle. That's all it is. if I was to take this car to an NHRA event and tech it, that's how it would be, just stock Eliminator. This car has very little horsepower and it has a lot of weight. In order to get this car to react in such a way that it's going to plant both back tires, no rotation, because remember now, anything 1 inch on the starting line is like a foot at the finish line. So you want the back tires as planted as possible. And the way to achieve that is to get 100% weight transfer back as early in the run as possible. You want to have that much daylight underneath the front wheels, right? You don't want the car to stand up like this. You want that much daylight. Because the taller the wheelie, the more rotation of the tire is used pulling the front end up. So let's just say, for example, it takes a third of the rotation of the car to lift the nose 4 foot. Well, that third of a rotation is a third of a rotation that you're giving up on the drag strip. So basically what you're doing is you're taking a 1,320 foot long drag strip and you're turning it into 1,321 feet for you. Think about it, right? Because the tire is only going to rotate so many times. If the tire is rotating is spent lifting the car, it's not moving the car forward. And it's the same thing with wheel spin. 1 revolution of wheel spin, take that much distance off or add that much more distance to the drag strip, because that's how much more you have to cover. All right. So to ballast a car like this, you want to have the center of gravity as high as possible, because remember, it doesn't have a lot of power. So in order to achieve that little bit of daylight, which means that you've got 100% on the back tires, the center of gravity has got to be high. Exaggerate it. Think of it this way. Here's the easiest way to visualize all of this stuff, okay? Do it in the form of an exaggeration. If I took 10 pounds and added it right here, and then accelerated the car forward at, let's say, just at 1G, okay? It's 10 pounds pulling back. But now what if I took that same 10 pounds and I put it on a 100-foot tall pole? Okay, now what is the value of that? If I move this car forward at the 1G, that 10 pounds on that 100-foot pole is enough to just flip this thing over backwards like a toy. It's nothing. So that's how you have to picture all this ballasting. Use the exaggerated example, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So for this car, you want the suspension to sit high, you want the body to sit high in the suspension, and you want the center of gravity to be as high as possible. And that'll get you that weight transfer back. That'll plant both back tires. Now let's go to the opposite, the exact opposite end of the spectrum. And let's talk about the funny car. I know you guys aren't interested in funny cars, but for the purposes of this, it'll help you understand all of those steps in between. The funny car, the center of rotation is generally kept as high as possible. So this would be in relation, let's just say in scale, this would be here, okay? I was using a taller tire. And instead of having the center of gravity up here, with the funny car, they move the center of gravity below the point of rotation. So now your center of gravity is going to be here. Why would they do that? Why would you put the center of gravity under the point of rotation when on this car you want the center of gravity above the point of rotation? That's because the funny car makes huge power, instant torque. And so the forces of the pinion trying to climb the ring gear means that the car wants to stand up and wants to do a moonshot. At the same time, though, it's moving forward. And so those cars are ballasted in such a way that as the car is moving forward, as the car is accelerating, it's trying to drive over, it's trying to roll over the center of gravity of the car. And so it levers the front end down. As much as the force is trying to lift the damn car, you've got more force pushing forward and levering the car down. And again, take that example of that center of gravity. If you took 10 pounds and you hung it from this point right here over a 100-foot pole, and now you accelerate it at whatever force you're going to accelerate it, imagine how much force there is going this way, levering the front end down. And that's why those cars are able to leave the way they do. They have wheelie bars, but the wheelie bars barely even touch the ground. And that's the other thing too, like wheelie bars. That's why wheelie bars are always set just the way they are. Tall wheelies are fun for the gasser classes, and everybody loves a wheelie, right? Who doesn't love a wheelie? But that's not the fast way to get to the end of the track, and that's why wheelie bars are always set so that the front end of the car can only come up so much. So going back to the example of the funny car. High point of rotation, low center of gravity. On the initial hit, the car is trying to drive over the center of gravity. It levers the front end down. Now, as the car is going down the track, let's say 200 feet, 300 feet, it's the rate of acceleration starts to diminish. Not that much, but it does start to diminish on a fuel car. Now, on other classes of car, it really diminishes a few hundred feet out. But using the funny car as an example, you've got that initial hit, car's moving forward, it's trying to lever the front end down. Now the acceleration falls off a little bit, the center of gravity, it moves back up. And at that point, aerodynamics take over. And the aerodynamics, that's why bodies are shaped the way they are. The aerodynamics now are pushing down on the nose of the car. And that now takes over from the acceleration. And that's how the car stays balanced all the way through. If you ever watch a funny car or that type of car and it wheelies like crazy, that means it's down on power. That's the telltale sign. If the car wheelies, it means that it's not leaving hard enough to drive the center of gravity down. Now, in the example that we were talking about with the no prep cars, no prep cars are difficult because there are so many different configurations. There really is a lot of individuality there. And a lot of guys will ballast at approximately the center of gravity of the car, right here. If the car would have a tendency to wheelie, you would then put the weight down here, because the weight down here, as the car is accelerating forward, again now, picture an exaggeration. You take 10 pounds and you put it right here, but imagine it's on a 10-foot pole. As the car is driving forward, it's levering down like this against the point of rotation and pushing down on the nose of the car. So if the car wheelies, you want the ballast low. If you're just trying to get the tire to plant, you want the ballast pretty much neutral, like this. If the car isn't wheeling, if it's not raising the front, then you would want the ballast up high. Because again, as the car is accelerating forward, this is trying to come down like this, and it's going to lever the front end up. So, again, see, every single car is different. Every type of racing is different. This is like the true science of drag racing. Like, this is really what it all comes down to. And any racer worth his salt, anybody out there who's successful, it doesn't matter, it could be one of the street outlaw guys, it could be a pro stock guy, it doesn't make any difference. If they're successful, this is the exact stuff that they know, and this is what they practice. And ballasting the car, positioning things in certain places to have a certain effect at certain points down the track. Because remember now, the dynamic is always changing. The car you have on the starting line is not the same car that you've got at 60 foot. It's not the same car that you've got at an eighth mile. It's not the same car that you've got at the quarter. The car is always changing. The dynamic is always changing. The speed is always changing. The power delivery is always changing. The aerodynamics is always changing. This is what makes drag racing magic. This is what it's all about. People are like, drag racing, it's just about you line up next to the other guy and you smoke him. No, that's not drag racing. That's kids playing games. This is drag racing. That's science of every inch. You know what I mean? And how the car changes every inch of the way. That's the science of drag racing. And that's the stuff that the builders focus on. This is what they know. This is why the car will be built with a ballast bar in a certain place, engine a certain distance out, engine a certain height up and down. All of these things come into effect. And every car is different. Every class of car is different. If you're trying to implement the stuff on your own car or learn from your own car, try to find an example of a car similar to what you're trying to achieve in the world of drag racing, let's just say. So, as an example, you've got a Chevelle, you've got a 386 Chevelle, right? I know that's so archaic. Okay, you've got an LS6 Chevelle, you've got an LS swapped Chevelle, okay, and you want it to run down in the 11s, consistently, without spending a lot of money, without going crazy. Look at a super stock version of that car and look at how they have things positioned. Look at how You know, find the closest combination to what you have and see how high the body of the car is in relation to the point of rotation. You know, how tall of a tire are they running? What height is the suspension stacked at? If you're trying to run, let's say, in the 10s, do not ever look at a car that runs in the 6s and say, oh, I'll do that to my car and run. It doesn't work like that. You have to go with cars that are comparable power to weight to what you have, and then try to copy that. And then from that point forward, you can start tuning and making your own changes as you go along. I'm rambling on. I could literally talk about this stuff from now until the end of time, because this is what I'm into. This is the part of it that I enjoy. So I'm going to leave it at that right now. I'll watch the comments and see if there's any overwhelming, you know, like sentiment that comes out of this, and we'll do the next installment of this. I don't want to call it a series. We'll do a follow-up video based on the biggest questions that you guys, or biggest statements that you guys have. And I'm open, you know, I'm open. There's drag racing is the only. What I'm talking about right now applies to every type of racing there is. It could be Formula One, it could be NASCAR, it could be, but they all have different disciplines. They all have their own thing. Drag racing is just the only one that I'm familiar with, so that's the one that I talk about. But I'm always interested to learn. So if you've got any unique analogies along these lines, throw them in the comments. All right, that's it. I've gone on long enough. I hope you got something out of that. I'll see you tomorrow.